You probably blamed your phone for your bad sleep. You've blamed your mattress, your stress, your coffee habit. But the real reason you're lying awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling has almost nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with something you stopped doing that your ancestors never stopped doing at all. Somewhere in Siberia, for thousands of years, hunter-gatherer communities slept in a pattern that modern sleep researchers are only now starting to take seriously. Not because it's exotic, because it might be closer to how the human body was actually built to rest. You've been told sleep should be one solid block. 8 hours, lights out, lights on, done. But that idea is younger than you think. Much younger. So what did people do before? Researchers studying pre-industrial sleep patterns across multiple traditional societies, including groups in the far north of Siberia, found something that broke the modern assumption completely. People didn't sleep in one continuous stretch. They slept in two. A first sleep, then a period of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night, then a second sleep before dawn. Let that sit for a second. An entire chunk of the night, awake, on purpose, built into the rhythm of rest itself. This wasn't insomnia. It wasn't a disorder. A study reconstructing historical sleep behavior found written and oral evidence describing this waking period almost neutrally, the way you describe a scheduled break, not a problem to be solved. People use that middle window for quiet talk, low-effort tasks, reflection, sometimes prayer, sometimes simply lying still in the dark. Then, when the body was ready, they slept again. Here's the part that should really catch your attention. When a sleep laboratory recreated pre-industrial lighting conditions, exposing participants to long, unbroken periods of darkness the way winter nights in the far north would have, without artificial light extending their evenings, their sleep spontaneously split into two segments almost immediately. Nobody trained them to do it. Their bodies did it on their own within days. Your biology already knows how to do this. It's just never been given the chance. Why would the body evolve a broken sleep pattern instead of one clean block? Doesn't that sound inefficient? It isn't once you understand what the middle window was actually for. In a long Arctic winter night, darkness can stretch far longer than any human needs for sleep. Sleeping straight through all of it would mean lying in the dark for hours after your body was already rested, wasting time that could be used for anything else. A brief waking period in the middle let people check on children, tend a fire, listen for danger, or simply exist a little longer in a night that had far more darkness to offer than sleep required. Two shorter sleeps, separated by an alert but calm interval, matched the length of the night far better than one exhausting single block ever could. Modern sleep science calls this segmented sleep, and it isn't just a Siberian pattern. Evidence for it shows up in pre-industrial societies across multiple continents, wherever artificial light hadn't yet stretched the evening into something the body never asked for. That's the twist. It wasn't Siberian hunter-gatherers who were doing something unusual. It was you. Your single, unbroken, 8-hour block of forced sleep is the historical outlier, not theirs. So what changed? The light bulb changed everything. Once artificial light let people stay active well past sunset, evening stopped being a slow wind down and became an extension of the day. Bedtime got pushed later and later until there was no longer room in the night for two separate sleeps. There was only room for one, compressed, forced block squeezed between a late bedtime and an early alarm. Which brings us to that 2 a.m. wake-up you've been blaming on stress. Sleep researchers studying modern insomnia have noted that a significant portion of people who wake in the middle of the night, lie there for a while, then eventually drift back off, aren't experiencing a malfunction at all. They may be experiencing a faint echo of the exact pattern their ancestors lived with for most of human history. The body remembers the two-part rhythm even though the environment around it no longer supports it. Doesn't that reframe things? You've spent nights anxious about your own wakefulness, checking the clock, calculating how many hours you have left, panicking that something is wrong with you. Meanwhile, somewhere in your evolutionary past, that exact waking moment was simply Tuesday. Nobody panicked at their own alertness at 2 a.m. It was expected. It had a purpose. It came with no shame attached. Modern culture attached to shame, not your biology. There's something almost tender about how this old rhythm handled that middle of the night window. It wasn't treated as wasted time or broken rest. It was treated as its own small, quiet phase of the day, one that belonged to reflection rather than productivity, to stillness rather than scrolling. Compare that to what you probably do now when you wake at 2 a.m. You reach for a phone. You flood a dark, quiet biological window with blue light and notifications, the exact opposite of what that hour was ever meant to hold. Then you wonder why falling back asleep feels so hard. It isn't hard because something is wrong with you. It's hard because you're fighting an old rhythm with a brand new tool it was never built to face. So here's the real question underneath all of this. What if that middle of the night wakefulness isn't the enemy of your sleep at all? What if it's simply the last visible fragment of a pattern your body still remembers, waiting for you to stop treating it like a malfunction? You don't need to recreate an entire Siberian winter to test this. You just need to notice what happens on the nights you don't reach for a screen the moment you wake. Some sleep researchers now suggest that simply lying in the dark, awake but calm, without checking a device or checking the time, mimics that old middle window closely enough to let a second sleep arrive naturally, the same way it did for people who never once thought of 2 a.m. as a problem. Your ancestors weren't sleeping wrong by modern standards. You're not sleeping wrong by ancient ones either. You're just living inside a rhythm your biology was never redesigned to fit. You've probably blamed your phone for your bad sleep. Maybe it was never really your phone. Maybe it was just the last thing standing between you and a rhythm you never actually lost.